So the song Make Me Come Alive came out of the story of Peter walking on water, and I've heard that story like 1,000 times because I grew up in church, you know. But in reading the verse, there was something that I noticed that I hadn't noticed before. And in the story in Matthew chapter 14, you know, the disciples are on the boat. Jesus comes to them walking on water, and they're afraid that he's a ghost. And so Jesus says, you know, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. And this is a thing that I never noticed before, is Peter actually says, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. Even though I've read this story and I've heard it like 1,000 times, I always just assumed that Jesus called Peter out of the boat and said, hey, Peter, come walk on water. But this really just kind of blew my mind a little bit, because here was Peter and all of these disciples in the boat, Jesus walking on water. And he was the guy who said, like, it was his idea, hey, Jesus, if it's really you, tell me to come walk on water. Like, what kind of a crazy person thinks like that, you know? And it just really struck me that the life of Peter in the New Testament, he has kind of like a lot of, you know, things that come out, his big personality, his big mouth, him getting himself into trouble and all of this stuff. But he also had such a boldness and a confidence, you know. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he was the guy that had the sword and cut off the servant's ear, you know. He was the guy that told Jesus that, you know, you're never gonna see death because we're gonna follow you everywhere. And even though that was like the wrong thing, and Jesus was like, get behind me, Satan, Peter was always bold to be the guy to say something and do something. And you know, I just really love the idea of Peter's bold faith. And it's not that he got everything right, but he had something that I don't really see portrayed in the other disciples' life. And that was that he had the ability to see what God wanted to do, like the limitlessness that God had for him, you know, where everybody else is sitting on that boat and thinking, wow, Jesus is walking on water and it's not a ghost, and they were excited about that. That's not where Peter's mind went. He immediately went to the next step, like, Jesus is walking on water. Maybe I could walk on water too, you know. And he was bold enough to say, hey, Jesus, if it's you, tell me to walk on water. And, you know, that kind of faith, that kind of confidence can only come from seeing how God sees you, from having a perspective of Jesus that is so clear in your mind that, you know, like when Jesus said, greater things you're going to do than I do because I go to the Father, and he's left us with the Holy Spirit and all of these things, you know. And yet as Christians, we live such safe lives, you know, such you know, we have all of these boundaries and all of these things, and we'll believe God for things, but I feel like, you know, God just really wants to challenge us to step out of the boat and believe him for more. Like, he's unlimited, and the things that he wants to do in our lives is unlimited if we could see the picture, if we could grasp the concept. And so in this song, you know, the whole idea of, yeah, there were wind and there were waves, and yes, Peter began to see the waves and the wind, and he began to sink because of fear. But I don't want to be that person like Peter, right? Who's going to let the wind and the waves and the problems and the potential of what could come against you to be the thing that stops your faith. And so I really believe that God is calling us to have bolder faith, to begin to believe him for greater things, to be those kind of people that can say, hey, Jesus, tell me to walk on water, you know, and be bold enough to do it. And when you do that, you come alive to a whole new level of living that other people don't get to experience, you know. And it really is our choice. We can spend our whole lives living safe, comfortable Christian lives, and not that every life is comfortable, because everybody goes through tragedy and has a hard time, but you can live a regular life, or you can choose to step out in bold faith and expectant faith. And I don't know about you, but you know, that's the person that I want to be. I want to be the person that's bold enough to say, hey, Jesus, tell me to walk on water, and then do it when he says come.
Good morning, Becky.
Good morning.
Or afternoon, evening, hard to say. It's a secret. But here we are on our episode number 4, and the song that we're talking about,
Make Me Come Alive.
Make Me Come Alive. And so we kind of love to hear the story of the song, because it helps us produce the idea and really, what would you say, the flower bed or the field, right, for faith to grow. So when we are God's husbandry, it says, right, we're God's field, and that's where faith grows, is in our heart, when we hear things that come by the Word of God. Yeah. So I'm excited about this song, because I don't know, do you think some of the songs, I mean, obviously some of them came first, and then some of them come along later. Right. But everyone has its own specific individual impact, right?
Yeah, they all, it's kind of a different, I mean, there's a lot of ways that people write, and I've, researched and been to workshops and stuff, and sometimes, people are like, they just dedicate time to writing, and we've done that before to get stuff to happen, But most of our songs, there's an idea that already comes from something that's happened either in prayer or in worship or through a testimony or something along those lines. And so this song, Make Me Come Alive, we had the melody. We actually had another producer who came up with the melody, and we're trying to put words to it. And it's one of those songs that took me a long time to write. I don't know why. But the thing that I got right away was that Make Me Come Alive, that part right there. And we kind of would hum the melody or whatever, and we go, Make Me Come Alive. Like, it was just so clear, that part, So then you're like, okay, so then what is the thing? And we knew that we wanted it to be about faith. And just one day when we were playing with the song and, working with one of the other producers who was trying to help me write, and just the idea of, I see you walking on the water, I see the waves that rise, right? I see the choice that is before me, to stay or come alive. And that whole idea, it just instantly came. I mean, after working on it for like 12 hours, it instantly came, And you're calling me to walk on water. And, like, I know it's not like Jesus is standing in front of us right now saying, come walk on water. But that idea that he's actually calling us to live lives of bolder faith, right? And that whole, when you actually step out, then the thing that we got first was, it really makes us come alive, Once you have an experience of God like that, it awakens you to a reality that it's hard to go back to the way things were, It's hard to be satisfied with the status quo anymore. And so when we're talking about parts of purpose and parts of passion, this song really is about bold faith, having that boldness to be the one to say, hey, Jesus, tell me to walk on water, And when I hear you say it, then I'm going to do it. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think, too, as leaders, we need to be that voice of Jesus and say, come on, let's go. Let's do something here that we've never done before. One of the challenges that keeps us, or the hindrances to keeping us away from reaching our purpose, is we slip into that status quo or that lethargy, that apathy, or whatever it may be, where we just kind of, okay, this is good for now. And it's really hard to break out of that. And I think our own lives and the inspiration of our own lives and our own faith is very similar to writing a song. Like, you've got to press through, and you've got to get there and never settle for, well, you can't just have one line to a song. It's not going to work. And our life can't be just a one-liner, right? We've got to be able to step out and do something. And the fact is that what makes our lives amazing is the amazing things that we actually take a risk at and go ahead and do it and step out and do it. So this is a breakthrough, right?
Yes. I think what the song kind of is attacking is this idea of, a lot of times we think the responsible thing to do is the safe thing to do. And I think a lot of times we're not stepping out, not because we're not thinking, God's not going to meet me here or whatever. We're actually thinking from a completely different angle of, how is this going to be safe for my family? How is this going to be safe for me? Is this the responsible thing to do? And I think the question when we're talking about purpose is, God never called us to live safe lives. Like, that's never ever one of his prerequisites. There's never. He's our safety, right? He's our refuge, and that's where our safety comes from. It doesn't come from keeping yourself in a position where you're never going to be challenged or put in a position where he has to come through. And I think the thing that we wanted to really say in this song is that it really is your choice, because you can live a God-honoring life and still live a quote unquote normal Christian life. And that can be your life. Or you can live a God-honoring life and be totally fearless in your faith and do something that's actually going to impact the world. And it's totally your choice, And God, Jesus didn't make every one of his disciples get out of the boat and walk on water. He wasn't like, you're not going to pass the disciple test if you don't walk on water. But yet Peter had the opportunity to. And that's the thing that really makes me just kind of like excited with anticipation, is the things we get to do if we choose to be the one who's going to be bold enough to say, hey, Jesus, pick me, or hey, Jesus, tell me to be the one that does it, And I think we need a lot more believers like that, more families like that, more churches like that, right? That would be willing to say, let's step out of what's comfortable and let's do something a little bit extreme and see where God's going to meet us on this thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think you get powerful testimonies. I mean, Peter's the only guy other than
true.
Jesus that I know of that gets to say, I walked on water.
Right. That's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this really, something has to trigger us, doesn't it really? Like, because it's a decision,
Yeah.
it's a choice. And so what are some of the things that we can do to kind of set ourselves up even to trigger? What did Peter do to set himself up?
Well, I think one of the things that I love about Peter is that he wasn't afraid to challenge himself, right? I mean, when you think about it, everybody was in that position. It was not great weather, right? Stormy. There's Jesus walking towards them. They're afraid that it's a ghost. But the second that Peter recognized Jesus, he quit thinking about the position that he was in, and he was paying attention to what Jesus was doing, right? And he was the guy that had the tenacity to say, like, if it's you, God, let me walk out on the water. And I think he had a way of looking at things that the other disciples kind of missed, which is kind of what made him an interesting character when you're talking about the disciples of Jesus. You know, he did put his foot in his mouth. He did end up doing a lot of wrong things, but he was the guy that was bold enough to say, I'm willing to go first. And I think that's one of the keys, is that when you have an idea or something pops into your mind, like, what if we did this for God? Or what if, you know, to be the guy that actually thinks on that challenge and doesn't just go, that's not me, you know, and then to be the guy, to be the one who goes first.
Right.
You know, you might be the first person in your family to do something crazy for God, or the first person in your, you know, social circle or whatever, but being able to see the possibility where other people just see the storm, right? And I think the key was that Peter was really looking at Jesus, and the second he recognized that it was Jesus, then he was saying, tell me to come out. And so as believers, as families, as individuals, if we're looking at Jesus and we recognize him in something, then be bold to take that risk and take that step.
And I think the opposite of the other side of that coin is that we're looking at ourselves. You know, I mean, how many times have we been in a situation and then later on we said, oh man, I should have done something. What an opportunity that was, and I didn't step up. And that, again, was Peter, right? In the upper room, they're waiting for who knows what, the promise of the Father, like what's that going to look like? And it says Peter stood up. And then he brought forth those scriptures out of the Old Testament, said we need to, you know, find somebody to replace Judas. And then the day of Pentecost came, Peter stood up again. Like he was the stand-up guy. Like, and that, so often that's all it takes. And I think if we're looking at Jesus rather than looking at our shyness or our whatever it may be, fear of losing or doing it wrong or whatever, then those experiences come, or those situations come where there's a group of people and nobody's taking leadership. And if we really care about people, then we'll take leadership for their sake. And that's really just what Peter did. It wasn't about being smart, was it? It wasn't about being the best trained or any of those kind of things. It was about that instantaneous, like, okay, it's my cue. I'm looking at Jesus.
And I don't think he was trying to be a hot shot. I don't see him as an arrogant person. I just see him as somebody who was so hungry to do what Jesus was doing, to be the guy that was there with Jesus. You know, like he had such a connection with his master that he just wanted to be the one doing everything that he was doing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's also the one that had the revelation. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. I mean, that's so powerful. And Jesus said, well, you didn't get this from anywhere but the Father. And so if we get our cues from the Father, we are in for a very exciting life of winning over huge challenges, and that's what we're made for. So thank God for that. So you can get this song and all the other songs on victoryworshipband.com, and it'll steer you to wherever you need to go, you know, whatever you use, Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, it's all there. And on YouTube you can search Victory Worship Band, Show Me the Greater. And that's important because there's a lot of victory names and
victory stuff. Victory is a very common Christian theme.
It kind of is, isn't it? And so we're just inviting you to take the benefit of these songs. They're just really faith imparting, excitement imparting, adrenaline rush creating songs, and worship with them, and the people that you influence, and the people that you get to bless and serve. Use the songs to worship with them. The chord charts are on that website,
Yeah.
everything's there. So we wanted to make it easy because we know these songs are impactful. They come out of the ministry in Asia here, and they're going around the world, and people are being blessed.
I'm coming.